Okay, that's recording. Turn this light off. Okay. All right. So let's use okay, last one. This is it. Reminder, first of all, that for the next few weeks,
just starting to
I'm sorry. Why don't you just shush like it asked you to? I don't understand. I'm sorry, okay. Anyway, never mind, let's start again. Okay, where was I? All right, so the next few weeks are set aside for you to meet with me about annotated bibliographies or your presentation, your PowerPoints, things like that. Okay, so on the syllabus it says one-to-one meetings, so just make an appointment. I will, if I remember, to send out an email on Wednesdays to see if people want me to be sitting here. So people who are on campus, if you want to come and meet with me during class time, I'm happy to be sitting in that office there. If no one wants to meet with me during class time, I would like to know so that I don't have to be sitting there twiddling my thumbs. If that time doesn't work, then just email me through Blackboard, make an appointment, so that, don't waste this opportunity to show me your work so that I can help you get it right. Because there's a lot of points, like ANOBIB 2 and the final presentation is 45% of the grade, just on those two pieces, right? But you'll be ready for those two pieces when you get your ANOBIB 1 back, and I started doing the HPE work on that today. So I'm hoping I'll get them finished Saturday, maybe Sunday, depending on what the weather's like. If the weather's only going to be nice on Saturday, I'll probably take Saturday off and work on Sunday. But you'll get those back relatively soon, and then use those to build ANOBIB 2, but talk to me about it, right? And then the presentations, I will put up a matrix pretty soon. That'll be a first come, first serve for slots. So if you have to have the 5th or the 12th, make sure that you let me know quickly before that's filled up. Okay? What else? Try to pay attention to the formatting requirements for these things. I had quite a lot of papers handed in for ANOBIB 1 that were not formatted the way I asked them to be formatted, right? So technically, on the syllabus, I could have gone big fat 0, period, and saved myself the grading. But I don't want to go there. I just, so just try to pay attention to that. There were like 5 or 6 people that did not follow the instructions. So, all right. So last bit of information, again, is more geared to the idea of creating your own literature review for a thesis, but it will also help you think about how to incorporate research into your essays and papers for your other classes. Okay? At least I hope it will. So that's the goal. So, at the end of the paper is your reference list. When you use someone's work within the paper and you have to cite it, all right? There's a couple of ways. One, remember, it's better to oversight than undercite, in my view, because that's easily correctable and it shows that you're trying to do the right thing. And you really don't want to end up being accused of plagiarizing another student or a paper or a textbook, right? The other reason for citing is that it allows the reader to be kind of making their own notes and going, oh, that's an interesting bit of information. I'd like to read more about that. I can scribble this person's name and the year down, and then I can go find it in the reference, and then I can go find it for myself and read it for myself, okay? So they're important tools for the manageability of the paper, right? When you write, it's always to try to give other people information. I mean, otherwise there's no point in doing it. You don't always have to do what we're doing in this class, where we're summarizing the whole paper and creating an annotated bibliography. So sometimes you might just want to cite by using the name and the year of the author. So there's a couple of different ways you can do that. You could start the sentence, for example, by saying Wall 2005 explains that blah, 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 blah.
So we don't need the whole citation at the top, because I know I was looking at some.
Well, you do on the anno bit, but in a paper you wouldn't. Like if you're writing a paper on sport law, right? And Dr. Yun will tell you you've got to use research, or you've got to go and find law papers that are relevant to the thing that you're talking about. Right? I don't know, I've never taken this whole class, right? But you don't always have to summarize the whole paper. You can just, you can have that paper to one side as backup for something that you're trying to explain. Right? So we can say Wall 2005 explains that toddlers at daycare show increased levels of cortisol in response to physical activity on the playground. Right? And you don't have to summarize the whole paper. Or you could say that, you could turn that around and you could say, physical activity on the playground increases cortisol, Wall 2005, blah, 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 blah. Right? So you want to talk about this idea about cortisol and playgrounds, but you can't just make a statement that it increases cortisol without supporting that statement. But in supporting the statement, you don't have to summarize the whole paper. You can just use the citation as the support. Right? Now, if you do this, ethically, you should have a copy of that paper, either a hard copy or an electronic copy, right? You should not be citing papers from an abstract you found online, or an abstract that you found in the databases for the library, but you didn't go and get the full paper. That's not ethically correct in research writing. Right? If you're going to cite them, then you should have a copy of that paper to hand. Okay? And I think that that's something that at the master's level, we're not very good at reinforcing. Right? So we tend to maybe let it slip a little bit, and you're not developing a library of research works, right? Which gets more important if you go on to do a PhD or to do further graduate work. But even at the master's level, if you don't want to do research and you don't want to read research, then you don't want a master's degree, period, right? A master's degree involves research, and that's all there is to it. It doesn't matter where you go or who you do it with, it involves research. So you shouldn't be taking shortcuts with your research. Does that make sense? As usual, same idea with the reference list, right? The way that you create this citation depends upon what kind of, is it a paper or a textbook or a blog or a newspaper article? Is it one author, two authors, three authors, six authors, right? So you can't rely on learning one format for adding a citation to a paper, because there's multiple different versions depending upon what it is you're citing. Okay, so again, that's just the way the APA manual works, and we have to live with it. Like it or not, we don't get a choice. Okay, let me just get this off, it's getting warm in here. Basketball finish. Are the girls coming?
Do they have the annotated on here as an example?
Citations. Yes, the citations is just before where the reference examples start. We've got a new version of APA to start with next semester, so I'll be starting from scratch. Oh my God. Let me see if I can find a page for you. Citations are... What's that today? Citing references in the text, page 174. One work by one author, one work by multiple authors, groups of authors, authors with the same surname, and so it goes on. Okay. So once you've got your information and you've got to try to lump it into an essay kind of form, right? Then, again, this is geared towards the idea of a thesis, but it's a similar situation with a regular paper. We want to make the reading easy, right? if I'm reading something, I shouldn't have to work really, really hard to understand what that person is saying. Is it just men or... we want to make it interesting. So we start off with some information to bring the reader in and get them interested in what we're doing. So we have like a little introductory paragraph maybe, and that might be where the purpose is. Sometimes the purpose is right at the beginning, sometimes it's at the end. And we want to have a continuous flow of information in a logical order, right? So the idea is to start out relatively wide this would be on a thesis, this would be your chapter 2, right? Your literature review. So you start out pretty wide, and then during the literature review, you funnel the reader towards the purpose. So you start off quite kind of general and broad, and then you gradually pull in more and more specific information, so that by the end of the chapter, the reader goes, oh, okay, I get it. I understand why that purpose is interesting and how it's unique and things like that. All right? You don't want standalone paragraphs or sections. So in the textbook, not the APA manual, on page 341, they talk about entrances and exits and linking paragraphs together, okay? So when you think about entrances and exits, there are several levels that you want to consider there. One, you need an intro to the whole paper, and then at the end you need an exit from the paper, right? And then for each paragraph, you may need an intro and an exit, so that it blends into the next paragraph. It doesn't just stand alone. There's a segue. Does that make sense? From this paragraph to the next paragraph. This paragraph isn't something I could remove from the paper and the rest of it made sense. Does that make some sense? If you have subheadings in your paper, same kind of thing. Every time you have a subheading, you should have an intro to that new topic, and then you should have an exit at the end before the next subheading. Okay. So really, just because that's good writing technique, I mean, that's not research technique, that's just good writing technique, okay? So your job then is to make your argument, again, I'm talking about a thesis situation, but it stands for any paper that you would write, right? You've got to make your argument, your rationale, very clear to the reader or the professor, right? So in our annobibs, what we're doing is finding research articles that support your rationale for your purpose statement. And then you would synthesize all those annobibs into one paper. Okay. Excuse me. So one of the, depending on whether you enjoy writing or not, one of the techniques that results in a good paper is writing it over and over and over and over. Right? So I think I did seven drafts of my lit review for my dissertation. And that was just one chapter, right? So that's part of the game, and we don't get a lot of opportunity to do that in this class because I only have time for you to hand me in a draft before the final submission of something so that I can give you a quick bit of feedback on it. But if you were writing a thesis or you're writing a bigger project paper, you want as much feedback as possible going along. Do a draft, take it in, get feedback, redo it, take it back again, get more feedback, redo it, take it back again, right? So there's a Chinese proverb that says something along the lines of a long journey starts with one step. Right? And that really is all there is to it. You just take a step, and then you take another step, and then you take another step. And you've got to get something on the paper, because until there's something on the paper, all it is this, and I can't give you feedback on that, because it doesn't mean anything. Right? We can talk and talk and talk, and it sounds like you understand what I'm saying, but until I see it on the paper, there's nothing for me to really help you with. Does that make sense? Grammar, sentence construction, spelling, punctuation, count. They count as part of the professional demeanor that you are putting forward to the instructors. They count from a reading perspective, because if it's written badly, it makes it really hard to read, and that makes it hard to grade, right? So if the grammar and things are poorly done, then that may impact your grade, just because it's not possible to read this and really get an idea of what you're trying to put across. And so you do yourself a disservice, because you're not getting at what's in here on the paper, right? You can get reader's block. I've done it, right? I've read like 5 different papers, and then I sit in front of the computer, and you sit there, and you're like, I don't know where to start. Like, I've got all this information in my head, I don't know where to start, right? Just either put anything down, or go back to reading and read more until something goes, oh, that's where I want to start this. That's the piece of information I want to start with, right? Say, see page 28 APA manual. Why do I say that? Let's have a look. Oh, because they've got a whole nice piece here on introducing, actually it's page 27. Introduction, introduce the problem, why is the problem important, explore the importance, describe the relevant scholarship. So again, there's more in the APA manual than all these silly rules that we have to follow. All right, there's actually some useful writing help in there as well. Okay, basics and mistakes. 340. Drafting, redrafting, we did that bit. Headings, subheadings, paragraphs, linking paragraphs. We did this. There's some really good examples in here. 341, 343. Where's my mistakes? I know. Oh, here they are. Common mistakes. Bless you. Common mistakes beyond poor grammar and punctuation that limit the effectiveness of the writing. I love this paragraph. It's great. So the first one is pudding, right? So pudding is the inclusion of text that, no matter how well it's written, lends little or nothing to the argument of the paper. So I'm just puffing it out to make it 10 pages because I was told it had to be 10 pages, but I don't actually have anything to say to make it 10 pages, right? That's pudding. And then the next one is repetition. So repetition is often the result of having too few points to make, suggesting superficial or thin analysis. So you say the same thing in different ways over and over because you haven't dug deep enough into the databases to give yourself a broad enough spread of research to work with, right? Trying to say too much is another one. So you waffle on, you make sentences really long, or you try to make the sentences very complicated with big words. Try to keep it succinct, to the point. Keep your writing clean. It doesn't have to be clever, it just has to be clean. No one's judging you on how many letters there are in the words. Okay? And then probably the best piece of information I was ever given in grad school, they call the cooling off period. So when you have written something and you think it's finished, right, put it away for as long as you have the time to put it away for, and then bring it back out and read it one more time before you hand it in. Because when you read something over and over and over, you miss mistakes that you make. Because in your head, what you read is what you think you wrote, but that's not what's actually on the paper, right? So if you read it 5 times and go, oh, it's fine, I'm going to hand it in now, reading it 5 times means your brain is filling in the gaps, right? It's better to read it twice, put it away, even if it's just for half an hour. But if you can get into the habit of doing your work a little bit sooner before the deadlines, put it away and then pull it back out again and look at it and you'll go, oh that wasn't what I meant to say there, right? Or, oh my God, look at that ugly typo, let's fix it, right? Which you wouldn't have seen before. So that's a really useful tool that I think saved me a lot of grief when I was in grad school. I mean, that's easy to say. My only job was my GA. I didn't have a job and school. I had a GA and school. So school was what I did. I mean, that was all I did. So that made it easier to use that piece of information, but so take your time. As I said, it's easy for me to say that my GA was teaching and research. So I was not working with an athletic coach who had me doing way too many hours, right? My advisor used to go, I've seen you way too much this week, go away, right? So, and I would teach my class and then I'd come in and ask her questions. She's like, do you think you're doing a good job? Did you teach the material? And I'd like, I think so. She said, then stop now. Get on with something else, right? So I was very lucky in my GA, but still, the point is that we chose to come back to grad school, right? It should be fun. Learning should be fun, whether I'm in grad school or not, right? Learning, period, should be fun. And we're not very good at teaching children that in schools because we make learning very repetitious and boring and obsolete because we don't link the learning to things, right? So try to enjoy the process as much as you can, right? Now you've got the opportunity to read research that you've picked to read. So the remainder of the semester should be more enjoyable than the first part of the semester because the first part is such a big learning curve that you feel a little bit overwhelmed, and B, you had to read papers I picked, not you. But now you're reading stuff you got to pick. So this should be a lot more fun for the rest of the semester, okay? Review your work, as I said, break before you read the last time before you hand it in. Give it to someone else to review. Because a fresh pair of eyes is going to pick up things, or they'll read a sentence that you think makes perfect sense, and they'll read it and go, what the heck does that mean? Well, if they don't get it, then chances are I won't get it, or someone else who's reading your paper won't get it, right? And then you have to pay them by buying them pizza. Because they did you a big favor by reading your paper through, right? And then I'm not gonna do this part of the PowerPoint because, as I've said before, when we, well, up until relatively recently, we had a second research class. And in that research class, you took your purpose statement and your annobib and you created chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3 of a thesis, which is the introduction, the lit review, and the methodology, right? But now we don't have that research class, unfortunately. So this next piece of information really leads directly to that class or to the thesis. So those of you who are thinking of thesis, if you want to look at this, if you want to meet with me and go over it with me so I can explain it in more detail, I'm happy to do that. But for those of you that aren't thinking thesis route and don't have this second research class, I'm not sure how helpful this bit is, unless you think it would just help with papers in other classes, in which case I can run through it quickly. References.
I'm not doing thesis.
I'm not doing thesis.
Not doing thesis. I'll read it. No. There's information here that would relate to a paper in another class, not necessarily a thesis, like being organized and having it laid out, drawing yourself like a flow chart or something like that to organize your train of thoughts before you write the paper. Things like that, I think, are very helpful. But it's a little specific. Read chapter 3 of your APA manual. It's great. It will help you a lot with your writing. And really, I mean, I like the process of planning the writing. I don't like the actual writing. I like the researching and the digging and the finding the papers and the organizing of it all, and then I get the, oh, now I've actually got to write the paper. I don't like that bit very much. But, you know, really, you're just trying to put forward an opinion. What do you think is valuable for someone else to know? Right? I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what writing a paper is about. It doesn't matter what class it's in. Okay? What is valuable? If the instructor sets you a question, what do you think is valuable information to answer that question? So I think that's it. So, let me just check that our other lady didn't turn up. Let me answer some questions. Let's think, what's coming up? So, Annobib 1, you've got your purpose statement and 4 templates. Annobib 2 will be your purpose statement and 6 paragraphs with your reference at the top of each paragraph. Okay? Remember that once we go into paragraph format, APA requires double spacing of everything. Okay? I've said it a lot of times. So don't forget it, because that would be a big ding if I get stuff that is single spaced or 1.5 spaces. Be careful with Microsoft, because Microsoft's default is 1.5 space, not 2 space. So you have to format your Word document to double space. Okay? What else? Then we'll have our presentations. That shouldn't be overwhelming. You're just going to tell everybody what you read about, what your purpose was and what you read about. Okay. The biggest thing is to make sure that you get the time slot and the day that you want, just in case you can't be here on the other day. There are participation points for the other day, but they're minimal. So if you have to miss one of those, it's not going to absolutely kill you, but I would encourage you not to, because you'll miss a lot of interesting information, because you're all doing very, very different questions. Okay? The online people will have to join in live through this idea, through Collaborate. And we'll be able to see from this end, we'll be able to see like 8 people here, and then whoever's next will bring their PowerPoint up here and go through it. Okay. There's peer evaluation on the presentation. So I evaluate and you all evaluate. Then I average your evaluation as the class, and then I average the class evaluation with my evaluation. So your presentation grade doesn't totally rely on me. Right? And I do that because I tend to be pretty hard, and the class tends to be pretty lenient, and so I think it balances out nicely that way. What else? Any other questions at the moment?
So is this our last class for
until the presentations, yeah. But as I said, I can be here at this time if this works. I'll try to remember to send out an email on Wednesdays and say, does anybody want me to be sitting in GA40 at 4:30? And I can use that time to Skype with people who are off campus, or I can use that time if people on campus want to come in and meet with me, or I can meet you at other times. Just send me choices for appointments. You know, it's not only the class time that's available for those one-to-one meetings. I've got other time during the week if that doesn't work. Okay. But I do think it's important that you take that opportunity, because otherwise you don't want the ANOBIB 2 to be a bad grade. It's a lot of points. And you don't want the presentation to be poor, because it's a lot of points. Okay.
So together, the second annotated bit and then presentation together is 45%? Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So for the presentation, you said 10 to 15 minutes?
It's going to depend. I'll let you know. It will depend how many people stay in class. I'd like it to be closer to 15 minutes, because trying to do it in 10 minutes, you're going to be rushing like crazy, and it'll be a little more stressful. 15 to 20 minutes is better. But even if we lose a couple of people, I'm not sure that we'll have time for 20 minutes. So I'll let you know once I've got a better feel. Did I open the folder that has the presentation information in it? Has anybody looked at that yet?
Because usually when you upload it, it'll show.
Let me see. I don't remember. Okay. Final presentation. There's a checklist there to help you think about what you're including. There's info for how to, if you're a distant student, how to access Collaborate and put your PowerPoint in. There's the peer evaluation, the My evaluation, and there will be, it's not there now, but there will be a timetable there. Okay? A lot of people did not complete their media site workshops. The second media site workshop is still available for 50% until the 12th of November, I think. I have it set to the 12th of November. So if anybody needs that, points. And I think that's everything I have.
For the final presentation, we have to submit on page 3.
Yes. Yeah, you'll email it to me. I don't think I have it set up as an assignment. I think I just say email it just because sometimes my notes lack clarity. And so occasionally I want to go back and have a look at the PowerPoint to confirm something that I wrote down on my scribble. But I think everything you need other than the timetable so that you can pick your slot is up there. All right. Anything else? Okay. That's it. PowerPoints are all up on Blackboard if you want to go back and review anything that we've covered in the class. The videos are all up on YouTube. I will load this one before I leave. So the library video is not on YouTube. There's a direct link in the lecture meetings folder there. So I think you've got everything you need to move forward. And if you have questions, just email me or put them on the discussion board so that everybody can get an answer from me. Right? If it's something global about how do I do this, then just bung it up on the discussion board and then I can answer it and everybody can get it. Okay? I've done the groundwork now. Right? The groundwork's done. Once you get Annabib 1 back, then it's just, unless Annabib 1 is terrible, it's relatively plain sailing once you get Annabib 1 back. Honest. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Let me turn this camera on.